Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I recently was talking to a friend of mine that I got into rod building a couple of years ago, and we were talking about a couple of the different rod blanks that we were building and just bouncing ideas and questions off of each other. And it was funny to me how, I started thinking about the fact that this particular person was somebody that in the beginning said they would never build rods. They didn't think that they had the skill to do it. They didn't think that they had the time to do it. And lo and behold, they're actually building more rods than I am right now. And I'm calling them for more advice than I'm giving advice to them, which I think is really cool. And I think it's something that happens quite a bit with rod builders. I think the majority of us are very, very timid in terms of getting started. And then once you get started, you realize how easy and simple and rewarding it is. And you kind of end up going head over heels in terms of being a custom rod builder. I think there's a lot of benefits and a lot of perks to it. And that's what I wanted to do today. After having this conversation with a friend of mine, I thought I'd do a video that addressed like the main reasons why I enjoy rod building and the benefits that I get out of it. It's just one of those things that I never thought I would do. I really never thought I would do. And I had a friend that introduced me to it. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was using the best rods that were on the market that were built specifically for me. And it would be really hard to go to something else at this point. The rewards are great. The time and effort to get involved are something that everyone thinks are going to be this huge, immense project, and it's really not. So let's just dive right into this, guys. I do plan to do a bunch of rod building videos coming up, but my tackle room has been a complete mess for the last couple months. And then you throw in the fact with the tournament season starting and a lot of different things going on the first couple months of the year, it's hard to get into rod building. Generally, I do more the second half of the year than I do the first half. But being that I've got my bench almost cleaned up, we'll be ready to go. And I hope to have a couple coming out in March. So let's talk a little bit about rod building in general. The first thing, the most obvious reason why I think most individuals like to build rods is because they can customize the rod to exactly what it is that they want. And what I mean by that is it's not just simply a matter of choosing the components, even though the components are very, very important. Uh, and they're what make the rod. The reality is it's just not choosing the components. So, for example, if I grab this CB 907 that I built, when I look at it, there's a couple of things that I'm going to point out. First and foremost, I like the split grip. I can choose that. I actually really like the wind grips as well. One of the negatives with the wind grips is they do tend to wear down faster than, say, a cork handle, but I love the feel of it. And the way that I cast, I tend to really do a lot of balancing in my hand, and the wind grips grab much better than cork. With cork handles, I tend to throw a lot of rods into the lake because I don't actually have a good grip on it. I'm using it much more as a pendulum, and I get much better feel out of the grips. The other reason I like wind grips too, being that I'm from the North Country, I actually feel like they absorb more heat and help my hands stay warm, especially when you're talking about your darker grip colors. They'll feel warm on a cold day, and I really like that personally. It makes a difference for me because I tend to get a lot of cold fingers when I'm fishing. But everything else, all your other components, whether it's the guides that you're using, the spacing of the guides, a lot of people don't understand how the spacing of the guides can either drastically increase or reduce your overall casting distance and accuracy. So being able to set those up exactly how I want, being able to choose the thread color. This is something I've talked a lot about on my channel. I love to choose specific thread colors based on the blanks that I'm building so that when I'm in the boat, if I have 15 rods on the deck, I can quickly grab, say, my vibrating jig rod and not have to go through 10 rods that are all the exact same looking for the bait. So it makes me more efficient on the water. You can choose the different reel seats that fit your hand better. Ultimately, what I'm saying here is everything about this rod is custom made. I have always in the past found at least one thing about a rod when I look at rods in the store that is something that I would prefer to do something different. It could be as minuscule as where I put the bait keeper on my rod, literally location of that. It could be the fact that, some people don't want double-footed guides. It's all of these various things that you generally don't ever find in a rod in the store. Doesn't mean you won't find a great rod in the store. What it means though is you can build the exact rod that you want. It's one of the most difficult things when you start rod building and you realize the benefit and how nice these rods perform because you built it specifically for how you want to use it. It's something that's really hard to go back to. And every time you pick up a store built rod, generally you pick it up and you're like, man, I wish they had done this one thing, or this is a great rod, except I don't necessarily like this one aspect of it. So when you build the rods, you can build them exactly how you want. So that's the first and most obvious reason. Once you do that, though, it leads me to my second point, which is I can build rods specifically for my favorite lures. And what I mean by that is you could pick up two deep diving crankbaits and they'll perform completely different on the same rod. I can build a rod now specifically for the baits that I want that allow me to get the best action out of those baits. If I know it's a bait that I use day in and day out, that's something that I feel like gives me a big advantage. And it's really interesting. And you can do this as a test at your house. Go take one bait and tie it on two different rods. The difference in that bait will astonish you if you tie it on, say, if you take a deep diving crankbait and put it on a 7 foot medium light or a 7/6 flipping rod. Just the feel in that bait coming to you through those rods is going to feel completely different. So once you start building your own rods, it allows you to really build the rods, not just for how you want it, but for the baits that you use. I cannot stress that enough. It makes you a more in tuned angler because now you're recognizing how little things on your rod and reel can really change the bait's action and movement as well. I just feel like it's given me a much better handle on all of the different gear that I have, whether that's baits, line, rod, reel, they all go hand in hand. And when you really understand what is going into the rod, it just makes you a better overall angler. I feel like my performance has drastically increased across the board since I started building my own rods. So those two things go hand in hand, but they're completely separate in my opinion. Obviously, if I'm building rods, I can save a pretty significant amount of money. So you can build, if you go to the store and you see a $400 rod, you can generally build that rod for roughly $200, roughly half the cost. To get everything that you need to start rod building, all of your rod building, the different equipment, whether that's your drying racks or your the different types of epoxies, everything you can get, you can basically get for roughly a couple $100. And if you go to say mudhole.com, they almost always have a kit that has everything you need in it where you can save a pretty good amount of money. I think a lot of times they're on sale for roughly $100. So the way I look at it is you can get all the tools, all the equipment for a couple $100, build one high-end rod. So you're in for $400 for the components, for the rod, as well as all the tools and the equipment. Say you spend $400, that's the exact amount that you'd spend for the same rod, quality-wise, in the store. Except once you have the tools, you have the tools. So it really allows you to bring that cost down over time. And it costs you about half of what you would spend on that rod in the store. Now, that's just if you're buying stuff whenever you wanted to, say through mudhole.com. If you wait for their big sales, you can save a ton of money on the rod blanks and it really drastically reduce the cost of the rod. So having the ability to build your own rod will save you money over time. I will also say though, you'll be addicted and probably want to build twice as many rods that you would actually buy. So maybe that ends up washing out, but at least you're saving some pretty good money. If you're looking to make a little bit of money, because you know how to build rods and repair rods, you're going to have a pile of people asking you to fix their rods, whether that's repair a broken tip, whether it's replace a guide, whether it's uh, chop a rod down. The point here is if you actually wanted to make a little bit of money because you have the ability to repair rods, you could do that. I generally have, I'm going to say probably once a month, I'm repairing a rod for somebody. I don't generally charge, probably shouldn't put this out there. But the reality is if you wanted to start a little bit of a business, you could do it because the skill set, even though it's very easy to learn, most anglers have no clue how to do any of this. So if you have that skill set, you can take advantage of that, hopefully generate a few extra bucks. And then the last and potentially most important reason why I love building my rods is just the satisfaction that I get from everything from catching a fish on a rod that I built all the way up to just making the friendships and spending time with my boys building rods. It is a very, very cool hobby. That's a small niche group of people, but it's extremely rewarding and satisfactory. So if you've ever gone and made a fishing lure, say you've built a spinner bait or you've hand tied a jig and you've caught a fish on that, magnify the reward that you got from catching a fish on your own bait by like 100 when you catch it on a rod that you've built. It is much, much more satisfying to catch fish on rods that you've built versus the baits that you've built. But like I said, it's one of those things where you just can enjoy it. You take a lot of satisfaction in it. For me, I love to do it during the winter months. It gives me something to do to think about open water. It's one of those things. All I'm going to say, guys, is if you start building your own rods, you're probably going to find yourself somewhat addicted to it and taking it to the next level. And when I say next level, I'm not necessarily saying you're going to be doing some crazy intricate wraps that are like drawing designs on the rod blank. I just mean you're going to fall in love with it and it's really going to make you appreciate fishing that much more. So give it a try. If you have not tried it, try it. And you can start with something as simple as just repairing a guide on an already existing rod. If you can do one guide, you can do a whole rod. It's that easy. I've got a bunch of videos. I'll tag the playlist. I do a build to catch series where you can see a lot of the videos I've done in the past. If that interests you, if you're a little timid in terms of starting, go to resources like mudhole.com. They have every video you could imagine posted. They do live streams. They do all kinds of stuff that answer all the questions that every rod builder has had before you. So it's not like the information isn't already out there. Give it a try. That's all I'm going to say. Give it a try, and you will find that it brings a lot of happiness to your fishing life. Anyways, thanks for watching. Let me know if you guys have any questions regarding rod building or if there are certain blanks that you want me to build or certain bait type, rod techniques that you want me to build. And I can go ahead and put that on my list and put some together for you as well. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate everyone out there. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.